Hello everyone, this is Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to take a crochet project bag and line it. Now this is really easy, don't panic. In part one of our mystery crochet pattern, we put together our project bag with all 12 of our 6-inch squares. And so today I want to show you how to line your bag so you don't lose all your goodies out of the bottom of your bag or even the side. Because when you use granny square type squares to put together your bag, you have all these little holes. And so I'm going to show you a really simple way to add a liner to your bag. Now this technique that I'm going to use today is very easy and you can use it on any size bag, whether it's crochet or knit or something else. It's just a really simple way to add a liner to your crochet bag. Now this is on my blog and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath the video just in case you want to go and look at those pictures to see how I did it. So what you're going to need to line your bag is 2 fabric bandanas. Now I purchased these at Hobby Lobby. They were only 99 cents and they work great. And I like to use bandanas because the edges have a nice seam on them or a nice hem, and so that won't cause any raveling. Now you can use 2 pieces of fabric that is 22 inches by 22 inches wide if you already have fabric and you don't want to purchase some. This is a great inexpensive way to line your bag. You're also going to need some straight pins. You're also going to need a needle and some thread. Now we're going to be hand sewing our bandanas into our liner. If you have your sewing machine handy and you want to use it, you certainly can. We're going to need an ink pen, our scissors, and then something to help us make a straight edge. And I like this big long ruler. We're not going to be doing any measuring with our ruler. We're just going to use it for a straight edge. And you can use anything that you have on hand. Even those children's rulers they use for elementary school work great as long as you have something to make a nice straight edge. And the last thing you need, of course, is your crochet bag. So here is the crochet bag that we made the other day, and this is the bag that I want to add the lining in. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our 2 pieces of bandana and we're going to lay them together. Then we're going to take our bag and we're going to put it about in the center. We'll take our straight edge and put it next to our bag, and we want to leave about a 1/2 inch space. So we'll just mark some lines, and this is going to tell us where we're going to sew on the side, and we'll do the same thing on this side. And the nice thing about the bandana having this hem on it is we don't have to worry about sewing it so that it doesn't fray. If you're sewing it on a sewing machine, you can always run another stitch line if you want to. All right, so now let's make a nice straight line on the bottom. And this just tells us where we're going to sew our line. Now remember, you're going to need to sew all the way to the top of your bandana so that we can fold it down for the top hem. All right. We can go ahead and move our bag, and we'll take our pins and we'll just pin it around so that we can sew it. Now, if you haven't ever sewn by hand, don't worry. We're just going to stitch a nice straight stitch along. No fancy techniques or anything. Now, the amount of straight pins that you put in, of course, are up to you. That one went through the carpet. That's not going to work. Whatever you're comfortable with, the amount of pins. Some people like to put them every inch or so. And also, if your bandana is not perfectly even, like this one isn't perfectly even with this one, it's okay. Not going to hurt a thing. All right, so now we have our bandana all pinned together. We have the lines marked where we're going to sew for our lining, and we're going to take our needle and thread. There's my needle. And I'm just going to bring out some yarn, I keep saying yarn, some thread. And I would suggest, if you're using cotton bandana, to use a cotton thread. But of course, if you don't have any cotton thread and all you got is polyester, use it. It'll still work fine. All right, so I've threaded my needle. I'm going to put a little knot in the end. And then I'm going to start right down here at the bottom and just make some tiny stitches going back and forth through both thicknesses of the bandana or the fabric if you're using fabric. Now, if you're going to use your sewing machine, of course you can just zip this right along with no problem whatsoever. I brought the camera in just a little bit closer so that you could see how I'm sewing. I'm just making little stitches, maybe 1/4 of an inch, and I go back and forth for 3 or 4 stitches, and I make sure I go through both thicknesses. And we're going to stitch right up the side of this bandana. We're going to stitch all the way up, then we'll go and stitch all the way across, and then we'll go up the other side, just stitching small little stitches. And yes, this is just a little bit time consuming if you don't have a machine. But I wanted you to see that even if you don't have a sewing machine, you can still line any bag that you want. Now, it doesn't matter what size your bag is, you can line any bag. And that's the neat thing about these bandanas. Like I said, it has that side hem, so it's not going to fray on you. And whatever size your bag is, whether it's knit or felted or whatever, just lay it out like we did. Get a nice straight edge on the sides and the bottom. Mark it with a pen or pencil. They have those marking tools that you can use. I've just always gone ahead and used an ink pen, especially if it's something that's on the inside. And then stitch it up just like we're doing this one. We're going to stitch up this side, we're going to stitch up the bottom, and then we'll stitch up the other side. And if you're a little bit nervous about doing this for your big bag, you can take a small bag that you've made and practice with just some leftover fabrics that you might have on hand, or even if you purchase some of these bandanas. Another thing you can purchase that work great for lining a bag is the fat quarters. I do not remember the exact dimensions on those, but they do work great also. Now, if you'll notice, I'm stitching up the side going from the bottom all the way to the top. And that's because we're going to be folding the top down for the top of our bag. So I'm just going to continue stitching these stitches. So I stitched the whole thing from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom to the top. And I'm going to make a little knot so it doesn't come out. And I'll clip that off, and then I'll go ahead and take those side pins out and put them back in my container. And now I'm going to repeat what I just did, working along the bottom and then working up this next side. So we'll have 3 sides of the bandana sewn. So as you can see, I have stitched all the way around the edge where I marked it for my bag. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to cut the 2 corners so that we don't have a bunch of fabric in the corners. And all you do is just cut like this, cutting off the triangle, but don't get too close to your seam because you don't want to cut your thread. And we'll do the same thing on this side. And that just helps it not be so bunchy in the corners. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to kind of fold these in like this. And that's just so they'll fit inside the bag. And we'll start sliding it inside the bag, because remember, that is what is going to be against the inside of the bag. We want the pretty side to be on the outside. And we're just going to gently ease it in. Open it up, make sure it's down in the corners with your hand. Extra piece of string there. Okay, and now we're going to fold the top down. So I'm going to kind of roll that down, then we'll fold the top of this down. Trying to get that even. And now we'll check to make sure everything's where it needs to be. And if you've not rolled it down enough, you can roll it more, or if you've over rolled it, you can pull some of that out. I'm going to roll mine down just a little bit more, because we're going to be stitching it to the inside of the bag, and so we want to make sure we've rolled it down enough. Grab those pins again, and we'll take that side seam here and line it up with our side seam here, and we're going to pin it so that we're going to be sewing on the second row of the single crochet of the handle, or of the band, I'm sorry. The second row of the top band. So I pinned it there, and we'll do the same thing over here. We'll line it up. And then we'll pin it. Take it like this. Pull it out a little bit. Then we'll pin it right in the front. And we'll do the same thing on here. Make sure it's laying good. And the nice thing about working with something that's crocheted or knit is you have a little bit of what I call wiggle room because it stretches a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to put a couple more pins so that when I'm sewing it on, I put it in the right spot. Oops, almost dropped my pin. I did. There we go. And I know that I'm pinning them sideways, and I like doing that on this because we're going to be doing a whip stitch. I won't have to pull those pins out till we're ready to. All right. So now you can see that I have pinned the lining onto the bag. So I've started sewing right on the inner seam, and what you're going to do is this row of single crochet, you're just going to go in that stitch, move that pin out of the way, and make some whip stitches. And you'll go all the way around the top of the bag. Now you may need to stretch your bag a little bit because your bag is a little bit stretchy and your cotton is not, to make it fit. We call that easing that in. See how I'm making those stitches? And we'll work all the way around the bag just like that. When you get to the handles, it can be just a little bit tricky. So we'll just continue to make those whip stitches. Just kind of push the handle forward and go in those stitches right underneath, because the handle is stitched onto the first row of single crochet and we're stitching in the second row. So just go underneath that handle. And I like to take my pins out as I go because, well, let's face it, I'm a little bit clumsy and sometimes I poke myself. And so if I can just get that pin out of the way, I'm not going to poke myself. All right, now I'm almost out of yarn here. I mean thread. I keep saying yarn because I'm so used to working with yarn. So when you run out of yarn, what you do is you go down into that stitch and then go right down behind like that. And that way it kind of hides your stitch. And you can just add some more yarn to your needle. And a lot of people will add a whole bunch of the thread, not the yarn, to their needle. But I don't like to sew with really long amounts, and so I'll probably do this a couple of times. So I'm threading it. And I missed because I'm so used to using those big eyes on yarn needles. There we go. Here's my two ends. Roll it on my finger and make a knot. And then when we begin again, we'll just go down underneath the fabric to hide that knot. Get in there. And then we'll just continue with our whip stitches, moving on around. Now the size of this bag, of course, we made it as a project bag, but it also makes a great shopping bag or farmer's market bag. It's just a great all-around bag. It'd be perfect for taking your stuff to the airport, or if you have to go and wait for someone at the hospital or something. Nice big bag to take everything that you need. And it would be fun to make a small bag, line it, and put your hooks in it so they don't get lost also. All right, so I'm going to continue on around my bag until I get back where I started. Got a little ways to go there. But this is a really simple way to take some fabric and line a crochet bag. I finished all the whip stitches, stitching in my liner all the way around. And if you feel like your liner's not going to stay in, you can always put a couple of stitches in the corners. Just make some whip stitches. I don't do it because I don't really think it's necessary, but some people, it frustrates them if their liner comes up. But once you've stitched it here, you really don't have anything else to do except fill it with all the fun things you're going to use this bag for. Now the other bag, I used a printed bandana set. This one I used a solid because I just wanted the pink to peek through so it would match my trim. But that is how easy it is to take any crochet or knit bag and make a liner so you don't lose all your goodies out your bag.